Well, good evening, listeners. You're listening to Lament of Hope podcast, and I'm your host, Danielle Richardson. And I'm so blessed today. I am speaking with Chari Hawkins. She is, if many of you know, she was actually in the 2024 Paris Olympics. She does track and field, but I'm going to actually have her speak about the specifics of what that looks like because it's not just track and field, it's javelin, it's jumping, it's a whole bunch of very athletic, um,
Event.
athletic events. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Um, but I think one thing also that really struck me about your story, and I'm going to share, is that I was reading in one of the interviews that you did that you suffered with panic attacks for a long time. And that's something you actually overcame as your worth wasn't really defined by the sports and you were able to separate the two, which I think would really help, especially if what ended up happening in the 2024 Olympics um, with the jump that got you a zero, but you still completed all the seven events. So before we go into it, can you tell the listening audience, like, what specifically is the athletics that you do? And then why specifically that one? Because when I was watching the videos and seeing it, I mean, it's really high intensity. And so it was hard for me to see. I'm like, how is this fun? It would just seem so stressful.
for sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. So I do what's called the heptathlon, which a lot of people are like, okay, we're trying to remember our elementary shapes, right? We're trying to learn like pent is five, like all that. So hep is seven. So it's the heptathlon, seven different track and field events. We go back to back over the course of 2 days. And the events are 100 hurdles, high jump, shot put, the 200-meter dash. And
Okay.
the next day we come back, we do long jump, javelin, and the 800. And so seven total, four on day one, three on day two. And yes, it is pretty hectic. The one thing that I really love about it, we do have that really, really intense endurance sprint, which is the 800, which is a brutal race. But other than that, you have to remember that, running, jumping, and throwing, hurdling, it's very play oriented. And so realistically, for my job, I get to play around all day.
Hmm.
And for me specifically, I get to learn all day long because that's what the events are. Because I'm 5'6" and I weigh 130 pounds, it's hard for me to be able to hurdle, high jump, and then also throw a big heavy ball, right? So we have to be able to figure out exactly what the physics are in each of those specific events. So, how fast do I need to go down the runway to be able to put my foot on the ground and launch my body into the sand? So, we practice that a little bit at a time. Also, what is the best angle that I need to throw the shot put with my frame? Because I don't have a ton of muscle where I'm lifting every single day because that's my sport. Like shot putters specifically, I mean, it is such an incredibly tough sport to train in. You have to, I think a lot of people assume that they have the most fun sport, which I'm sure a lot of them would think so too. I don't, because I actually trained with a professional shot putter. And when I tell you he had to eat perfectly on the hour, he had to eat a certain amount of calories all day throughout the entire day. And he
Hmm.
had to lift so heavy because he needed to make sure that he was so strong. Each of these sports is its own specific discipline, and I have to do all seven of them. Or I like to say I get to do all seven of them. So it's a science and it's a game at the end of the day. And so yes, it is a lot of hard work because there's so much that you have to put into, but at the end of the day, there's so many things that you can learn every single day. And that's one of my things that I love in life is progression and learning more. And so for me, it's perfect.
And you worked like, was it 20 years to get to the Olympics?
So yeah, so I haven't been doing track and field for 20 years. This year was my 20th year since I started
Wow.
track in the first time. So yeah, so it did. It took me 20 years of doing a sport before I actually made the Olympic team.
And did you like, was the Olympics your goal? Like, that's what you, as soon as you started doing this, was that where you wanted to be?
A fun story actually is my mother. I grew up in a very conservative religious home, and my mom was talking to me about tattoos. She was like, "No, I don't want you to get any tattoos. Your skin's so beautiful." And I was like, "Oh, mom, don't worry. I'm not going to get a tattoo unless I make the Olympics, and then I'm going to get the Olympic rings." And my mom, it's so funny. My mom was like, "Oh, Shari, if you make the Olympics, I will buy your tattoo." And so I actually remember this was my third attempt at going to an Olympic trials to try to make a team. And before the Olympic trials, every year for what is that? Three Olympic trials. So 8 years, I was like, Mom, like if I make the team, you have to buy my tattoo. She's like, okay. And then I made the team. And I actually remember calling her and being like, hey, do you remember we talked about you need to buy my tattoo? And she's like, I don't remember. And my dad was like, "Oh, I remember. I remember that. I remember." It was like a really funny story. So the answer is yes. I think there was always the part of me that really thought that I could do it. I originally thought that I would go in volleyball. That was always the sport of my life. Like I loved
Hmm.
volleyball so much, but I was 5'6", and so I never grew any taller. My sister's 6'1" and my brother's 6'5", so it's really not fair. I had the genes to get taller, but I also had the genes to stay short. And so I ended up getting recruited in college for track and field. And really, it was just one of those things. I kept telling all of my friends when we would give ourselves updates, the friends that I haven't seen in a couple years, we give updates, and I'd be like, my life hasn't changed since I was in college. I'm still just doing my thing in track and working hard, but just every year getting a little better every time. And then eventually I made it to the Olympic team. It was pretty cool.
It takes a lot of perseverance and you have to really love it, which it
For
seems you
sure.
do. Um, I was going to ask you though, you you like doing this so long and working so hard for this. I mean, do you still struggle at all with it not defining who you are? Because like if somebody was going to stop you in the street and didn't know that you did Olympics, that you were an Olympian and that you were athletic and that you do all of these amazing things. And honestly, I mean, it's an inspiration to a lot of ladies to see you being able to do all of these things in an
Mhm.
athletic way. What would you say to someone if they're like, who are you? And they didn't know about your Olympics and all of the athletics that you do.
I mean, I think that, like, first of all, if you see me on the street, come up and say hi 100% of the time, and we can. I love that so much. It would make my day. But if somebody were just to come up to me, maybe see like the shirt that I was wearing and being like, "Oh, tell me your story." I would actually really emphasize like the biggest thing that I always like to say is that I do think that the Olympics is so cool to watch those phenoms, right? They were good when they were 16 years old and they were good when they were 12 years old and they were just incredible. They were born for this sport and those people are so fun to watch. But I also think that the Olympics is so special because it really highlights perseverance and it highlights if you want something, even if you weren't maybe born to do it, if you keep going, eventually you will get there. As long as I always like to say in sport, if you stay healthy and keep at it, eventually you'll get to where you want to go. And it's not always going to look like exactly how you want it to look like, but eventually you'll get there. And so I would really try to tell my story in that way is I actually made my first Olympic team at 33 years old. Which making an Olympic team isn't insane at 33 years old, but making your first Olympic team is quite special because a lot of times people have been, making Olympic teams by that since they were 20 and, they were just phenoms from the time they were little. But it also just goes to show that if you keep working hard and you keep going after it, like dreams will come true eventually. They don't always look like how you imagine them looking. Sometimes they're better and sometimes they're just different. So super cool.
So if you didn't do track and field, what would you do?
That's a really good question. I have my bachelor's and my master's degree in education. And before I decided
Okay.
to really invest a lot into track and field specifically, like me as an athlete, I really was interested in potentially being a superintendent. My parents are both
Oh,
edu
wow.
Yes, my parents are both educators. And I remember my mom had just the hardest time one year because she had a boss that didn't like her. And my mom is the best teacher. A lot of my platform is teaching. And I genuinely believe that I got my teaching from my mom and my coaching from my dad. And the combination of both being able to teach a drill without actually showing them exactly what to do one-on-one is from my mother. And I think just my like energy is from my dad, and like being able to combine them is really what makes everything so fantastic for me, specifically in terms of my social media. And I genuinely believe that like she's just the most phenomenal teacher. But watching her, like growing up, watching her feel belittled and bullied, and it took the energy out of her. And she was always somebody who, when school was over, she just wanted to have fun. And I would go in to see like what my mom was up to, and she would just be like taking a nap. And my mom was not
Mm.
the person that was just taking a nap. And I kept thinking like, oh, I think my mom isn't feeling good, or she's not doing well. And as I kind of got older, I learned, a little bit more. And I used to want to be a principal. Like that was always what I wanted to do, like be able to like be um a teacher's best friend and make sure that our teachers are taken care of, because teachers are so important to the world, and they're teaching the next generation, and they need somebody on their side. But then, when I learned about that, I was like, you know what? I actually want to be in charge of the principals. And I want to make sure that I have
Hmm.
principals in schools that are principals for teachers, and that principals, how can I be a more hands-on superintendent so that my principals love their job and love their teachers, and the teachers love their principal in return. And because of that, the students are eventually going to thrive. So I could see myself taking that route, maybe getting my doctorates in education, becoming a superintendent. I could have absolutely seen myself do that. I could have seen myself, I would have loved to be on like the city council of some sort. And
Oh, wow.
I definitely plan on having children. And so, like being able to be a parent, I could have always seen myself writing a book, or I could have always seen myself just doing something like I'm one of those people where if it sounds fun, I'm gonna try it. Even if it seems a little difficult, if it seems like something that is fun, but I think I can do a good job, like I'll probably go all out with it. So not sure exactly what it would have looked like, but I'm sure it would have been a really enjoyable ride for sure.
Now, how long do you think you'll stay in track and field?
So I always take it one year at a time, because I'm 33 now. I used to take it one cycle at a time. So I used to think like at first I was going until 2016. Then I decided I was going to go until 2020. And that's when I was going to, I'm not going to promise anything after. When COVID hit, before COVID hit, actually, I had decided I was going to go no matter what until 2021, even before COVID, because in 2021, World Championships were in America. So I was thinking to myself, oh, this is seriously so perfect. We can end the career. We go to the Olympics and then we end the career in America. It would be so amazing and beautiful. My whole family can come. That was just like my plan for myself. And then when the Olympics were postponed, the kind of natural occurrence was just, okay, we're going to go until 2022. And then it was interesting because I didn't make the Olympic team in 2021, and I couldn't have imagined myself, because I never went more than just a couple of years at a time. So I
Yeah.
couldn't have imagined myself going until 2024. That wasn't never in my plan. And so I was devastated. I was so devastated because I just was never going to be able to say I was an Olympian. I had made world championships, which is a similar process, just not in an Olympic year, but never an Olympian. And it was just so heartbreaking for me. And then it was it was the next year I decided I was just going to give it one more year. You can't end like that. That's like what I was thinking. And the next year, oh man, it's so wild to see how negative things can turn into positive things, because I really thought I was going to go to World Championships. Weirdly, I was so confident. Like I was so much better. I had made it to World Championships indoor, and I was like, I'm ready. It's outdoor season, and they moved our competition to qualify for outdoor season up 2 months. And so because of that, I just finished. indoor world championships and I was so exhausted and I had no time to prepare for those championships. So I kind of just showed up like, let's see what happens. And I ended up taking fourth and they only take the top three. So I didn't
Oh,
qualify for
wow.
out. And it was so interesting because they moved it up for 2 months, my season wasn't even close to over. Usually that would be where my season ended. But I went overseas and I competed and I did so well. And I did actually so well that year that I ended up getting a ranking that was good enough to qualify potentially for 2023 season. So you have to take top three and you also have to be within the top 24 ranking. And so I was now in the top 24 ranking for the next year. And that's when we were like, you know what? One more year. We're already in the ranking. Let's try it. And I made the world championships. And after that, we were like, I just think that, we did so good at the world championships. I think we should be done. And then we looked at the ranking and I was ranked 10th in the world or ninth in the world. And we were like, we got to try for the Olympics. We got to do it. And here we are. Now I'm an Olympian. And honestly, it wouldn't have happened had I not made the team in 2022. So now I like to say we always wait until the end of the off season, which is right now. It's usually a 3 month period. And we always like to wait and we always afterwards, I have actually been like done. I'm done. And then at the end of off season, we talk to coaches, we figure out me and my husband, and we're always like, okay, let's do one more. So I never say never and I never say never because I've been wrong on both ends before. So I always like to say just enjoy my off season. I'm not sure exactly what's going to be the next stage. It could be getting ready for a another year, or it could be getting ready for a family. So I don't know what it brings, but I at this point life has been too um on purpose for me to question anything. So whatever choice is correct is going to be the correct choice, and I trust whatever comes up is I'm ready for it.
Is it hard for you and your husband? Like, I mean, I don't know. I guess I wonder because what does your husband do?
So my husband, he is able to work from home and he's able to work from anywhere. So he is
Okay.
just like it's so perfect. And the other thing about him is we met at Utah State. He was also a track and field athlete. And
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
so he gets it. And I think that's this thing that's so nice is his flexibility. He went to the Olympics, he was at World Championships, he comes to all of my meets. A lot of times in my overseas meets, he's kind of my coach, if my coaches can't make it. So he's just the ultimate partner. When I was really sore and I had practice the next day, he'd wake up early, make me breakfast so that I had food for practice and make me lunch. And he's so amazing. But also, his whole family lives in Utah. My whole family lives in Idaho, and we've been here in San Diego. And so, like, he also, like, we're both sacrificing so much to be able to do this dream. And so, both of us, in order for us to do this, both of us have to go in with our whole hearts.
Well, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he seems to really be coming alongside your dream right now, right?
Ab Absolutely. The one thing is my husband CJ and I have been together for 14 years. And so the one thing that I love about him too is how fiercely independent he is. So he actually also owns an entertainment company in Utah and is incredibly busy. And the perfect thing about like our season is during my off season is his on season. So he has all of
Oh,
his events
wow.
during the fall time and during like the holidays. And so because of that, I'm usually off on in like December. I take a little 3 week break, and then I'm off for 3 months in the fall. So when he's in his busy season, I'm able to go with him and kind of be his cheerleader and kind of just like be the person that's like, oh wow, that's my husband. And during my season, he's able to do the opposite and say that's my wife. So I'm really that I mean
Wow.
it's super cool because we've always been able to have our own thing, but also be able to be with each other during supporting each other's things as well.
And it's never been difficult at all for you guys?
So we did long distance for 2 years, and my thing, the biggest piece of advice I have for distance, it's two things. Is number one, You have to have a solid foundation and understanding that this is it. Like you and I are end game, and it's not we'll see what happens because if it's a let's just date distance and see what happens, I could be wrong, like because I don't have that experience, but in my opinion, unless you guys are end game, it's not worth it because it is really difficult. Um,
Yeah.
if you guys know your end game, there's no issue with trust. There's no issue. And that's one thing that we've never had an issue with ever is trust in our relationship of all 14 years. And so
Mm.
that really is super, super helpful. But knowing, and we've also gone to a space where we've had this conversation of life is hard and marriage is hard and dating is hard and sometimes being with you is hard. But at the end of the day, I'm not going anywhere and you're not going anywhere. And I choose to stay and fight and you choose to stay and fight. And that's understanding number one. There's so much trust and nobody's going anywhere. That's number one. And number two is you have to know when you're going to see each other next, even if it's 2 months away, because you can always have something to look forward to and it doesn't
Yeah.
feel hopeless. So I would say that that was a tougher time. But again, because he had his business that he was building and I had track and I was working really hard, because we had our own things, it was something that we were able to focus on ourselves so that when we came together, we knew, we knew that we did our things. So yes, yes, there's a lot of difficulty in relationships in general. Whenever I think they say marriage is hard, I think it's because sometimes communication is so important. And I think communication can be hard sometimes because you think you're saying one thing and they're hearing something completely different. But I think that that's just marriage in general. And I think because he said yes to. So every time that we did track, I would never have done another season unless CJ was on board. Never. So when we say yes together and we go all in. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that that's why it's never been difficult during, like, oh man, like you're at track again, you're at track for 7 hours a day, 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day, and you have to go to bed and we can't eat anything and where we can't go home for Thanksgiving. I had pain in my back. And so I had to see my physical therapist over Thanksgiving. So we weren't able to go home for Thanksgiving. So we just had to do like Thanksgiving, just us two. And it's like, those are the kinds of things that end up happening every once in a while. You have to miss a lot of stuff. But if you're both in it 100% and it's both of your decisions, I don't think that it's hard. Um, because both of you are in the understanding that we're in this together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to tell you what you're saying is it's not typical. It isn't. I think especially just in the culture we live now, there's a big emphasis on making sure you do what you want and what you love and find someone who loves what they love and then you both do what you love, but you don't really do it together. You can be together, but you're not really doing anything together. It's just kind of more of a separate lifestyle, but at the same time, you're joined by dating, marriage, whatever it is. Um, but for you, I think what's so unique, and I want to ask you about this is, first of all, you talk about wanting a family, but
Mhm.
here you are, an Olympian. You're top of your game. It's like, why kids? It's like you have this awesome career and
Mhm.
you've achieved so much, and then at the same time, you have this deep respect and love for your husband. And it's like, it's amazing to me. I think it's so beautiful, but it's not a customary story. It's not usually the stories that you hear from people who've got a million followers and people who have more, who are more in the spotlight. Like, why is that? Why for you, for instance, why do you desire kids so much when you're an Olympian and you're at the top of your game? I mean, and you don't, to a lot of people, it's like you don't need kids.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and why does it matter to you so much that your husband actually be a team with you on these decisions?
Yeah. I mean, I think that these are all really good questions. And I think that they're like topics that need to be discussed because I think that a lot of times, especially when for me, like I am somebody who needs to be respected. And I don't know, it's not because I feel disrespect. It's just one of those things where I respect people so much. Um, Truly, I honor human beings. So I'm such a people person. And so because of that, it's just in return, like we're going to be best friends, whether you like it or not. And that's just like sometimes how I am. And I love that about myself. And because of that, I think I am drawn towards people who are really similar and who really honor relationships and really have balance in their lives when it comes to those sorts of things. And so I've personally never had, and to be fair, we do need to call out something is CJ is the only boyfriend I've ever really had seriously. We met freshman year of college. And so I mean, I had the cutest little boyfriends in high school, but like a really so cute, so sweet. I love them so much. Like truly, they're just, the cutest humans ever. But truly like my very first very serious relationship was with CJ, and we have grown genuinely in awe of one another. I have He is one of the most kind, smart, savvy, hardworking, truly thoughtful, wise. He's one of those people who you feel safe with him because it's one of those things where every like he can look at you no matter if emotionally you're going through something bad or in a relationship you're going something bad, and he'll look at you and he'll say everything is going to be okay. I promise. I'm here with you. And I think like being able to be emotionally safe in that way, I think that's, I don't know, I can only speak for myself, and it's so hard because I have no frame of reference, right? But for me specifically, that is to me safety when it comes to like protection of like your family or protection of your wife. Like to me, that emotional safety is number one for me. And
Mm.
he provides that, and it always has. And because of that, and he's just so phenomenal in everything he does. He inspires me every day. And I think genuinely, he would feel the exact same way about me. He would genuinely feel like I inspire him. I think that he'll tell me that he'll see my story from one of my practices and he'll go to the gym for a second time because he's like, wow, she worked out so hard today. She made me want to go like run harder. And he like went to the gym. He's like, I ran like 5 miles today. I was like, Shari killed it so hard like today. And I think like we genuinely have so much love and so much like for each other. And
Hmm.
thing he says to me, like I want him to tell me his opinion, and I think he wants to tell me my opinion. And I think it's just kind of the relationship that we have both genuinely cultivated since the time we were, teenagers, like 18, 19 years old, up until now. And you're right. Like, I don't know if that's everybody's experience because again, we're all such, like I said, I just love humans, and humans have so much depth, and they have complications, and they have pasts, and they have histories. It's the same thing with sports in general, is like there have been certain like events that I have had really bad experiences with. Like I have fallen in hurdles and almost shattered my knee. And so it was so hard for me to get over another hurdle, and I had anxiety all the time. I would have panic attacks going into practice because I got hurt doing it. And that's something I love so much about sport, is how crossover it really can be. And I think within relationships it's that same way. Like when we hurt each other, we really have to work through those things. And it doesn't mean that CJ and I have never like, said things that we were probably like, "Ooh, shouldn't have said that." Or that we don't have arguments, or we don't have series of arguments, or we don't have bad moments. Like, and it's the same thing as like making the Olympic team, is it wasn't just like a string of amazing events. I didn't make a team in 2021. I didn't make the team in 2022, but those are the things that ended up making me stronger. Just like in my relationship, we stumble and we fall and we have to go see a marriage counselor because we're like, yeah, let's call her a marriage counselor because neither of us are going to agree on this, but both of us are always here and we're always willing to move forward together. And it's the same thing with my sport. How did it take me 20 years? Maybe because I wasn't meant to be an Olympian, but because I kept getting back up after I fell, that's
Hmm.
how I eventually got there. And I think that's what my husband and I have done through our relationship as well.
I mean, it's a very powerful testimony, to be honest. I mean, just because I think in our culture, just with everything, it's really easy to just give up, and
Sure.
if it's not easy, if it's not convenient, if it's not working, if it's not helping me right now, just give up and do something different. And so I mean, it's just neat for me to hear not only in your sports, but in your personal life. It's like, no, perseverance is the theme of
Sure.
both of these things. I mean, that's just amazing. And such an encouragement. But with your love of family, what gives you that deep love that you want kids?
I think it could be my parents' background in education. And so I have my degree in education and I've always loved kids my whole life. I'm also the youngest of five, so I loved having my siblings. And then I also have, I believe it's 13, but it could be 14 because there's a lot of them, nieces and nephews.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Yes, because I'm the youngest of five, so I have 14 nieces and nephews. I also, when I first went pro, I wasn't making any money. In fact, I was losing a lot of money, a lot, doing track and field. But I was a nanny and I did babysitting, and that was my job. And so I think I've always just been drawn to like the curiosity, the adorableness, the wackiness, and like the lightheartedness that kids bring into lives. And something that I'm like really appreciative because there was a part of me that thought that I might have kids younger. I'm 33 now. I thought I would probably be a mom by the time I was 23 or 24, in the religion that I grew up in. And a lot of, actually, most of my friends have 3 or 4 kids now. And that was their story as well. And it is so magical, like watching my siblings raise children and watching my friends raise children and hearing their feedback about the things that they loved that they implemented and things they wish they might have done differently. I feel like being able to be curious about, how could I potentially be the best parent and
Hmm.
how potentially could I raise people that can make an impact on the world and how can I make an impact on them and how can I bring them through life in a way where they're not an extension of me. They get to be their own person, but I get to also, I actually am the opposite. My dad used to say, "Well, I'm not your friend." Which is so funny because now he's like, "We're best friends, right?" Now that I'm an adult. And I'm like, "Yes, of course we're best friends." But I actually genuinely believe that, like with parents, I am so excited to be my kids' best friends. I just also understand that I'm the only friend in the friend group whose brain is fully developed. So I have to be the one that's in charge of making sure we're not doing anything crazy.
Yeah.
So we can be best friends, but I actually have to be the one that has the brain. So guys, sorry, but as the frontal lobe of this group, no, we cannot go and run over that car with this. Like, it's not going to be a good choice. So, yeah, no, I think it would be a really big honor for me if I was able to have children. And honestly, if it doesn't end up happening too, I know that that wouldn't be my only purpose. And I think I had to do a lot of unlearning with track, with detaching my identity to anything. And I think a lot of people will also attach themselves and their identity to their children as well. And it's hard not to because they're a piece of your soul. I mean, I love
Yeah.
my niece and nephews so much, and I can't even imagine how much more I would have, how much more of a hold a child could have on me than they do. But I know that there's no comparison because they've all told me, like, man, like when it's your own child, you just feel so protective over them.
Yeah.
And to be able to also not lose yourself, just like you can't lose yourself in your sport. It's going to be my hope that I can do the work to also make sure that I'm keeping my identity as a human while also trying to raise little baby humans as well. So interesting. I'm excited for that next step whenever it comes or if ever it comes.
Well, you were talking about identity, separating it from from your children, which you're right, it's true. It's also very damaging when you know your children, your identity, because usually they have to be like you or how
Sure.
you want it to be done. They also were talking about identity not in sports, which is something you've learned over the years. So what is your identity in now? What do you think, like, how do you define your identity at this point if we're not talking about sports or parenthood or marriage?
Yeah, I really love that question. And I think it's a hard question for people to answer in general. But it's a really fun if you guys did want to try it yourself and journal out, when do I feel my best? What is that person doing? But not she's making a lot of money, not she's getting up, like not all things you can control. So it could be she wakes up early and meditates. She is kind to the people around her. She sends care packages once a week, or she makes sure to call her parents every day, or she bakes fresh cookies every week, or whatever it looks like. What I try to keep my identity on now is um, never what I'm accomplishing, but instead, how am I showing up? And hey, sometimes she lays in bed when she's feeling bad. She takes care of herself when she's feeling down. If she needs a nap, she takes one. And if she needs help, she asks for it. And if she needs a break, she gives herself a break. And if she needs some ice cream, she goes and gets her favorite ice cream. Like she doesn't just go, whatever ice cream is there. Like, no, she's ready and she treats herself. And it's really fun to do that. Like I will doodle like what is the best version of me? Like how does that girl show up for herself? And how does she show up for others? Because I genuinely feel like the actions that we take every day, that's really what's reflecting how we're feeling. And if it's like, yeah, well, I'm scrolling TikTok every day. But if you're doing it on purpose, because I genuinely believe this, if you're doing it on purpose because you're like, you know what? I have been so active all day, and I really do just want to lay down and give myself a couple of dopamine hits in doing this, but I'm going to do this for me. And you're showing up in that way. How empowering is that to even do like your tiny little guilty pleasures for yourself? Set a timer. If you don't want to be on for more, give yourself, hey, I don't care. Give yourself as long as you specifically want, but do it on purpose and do it like with your whole self, making sure that you're giving yourself your best. And so, no matter what I'm accomplishing in life, I want to make sure that the way that I'm showing up is what I'm actually identifying with. And the great part about that is I can show up differently every single moment of every single day. So if I find myself not showing up the best, I can literally change it like that. And that's why I like doing it, is because you're never going to be in a situation where you can identify yourself as a negative situation, because you can always flip the switch right away. You can catch yourself maybe living outside of what your expectations of your self identity is. But because once you catch yourself doing it, there's no need to wallow, because you get to change it right away. So I would highly advise people to detach their self-worth on their specific accomplishments. And when accomplishments do come, acknowledge them for what they are, which is accomplishments that can potentially give you an amazing story, accomplishments that
Hmm.
validate the work that you've been putting in, um, and accomplishments that are eventually going to no longer be there. They're going to come and they're going to go regardless. So yes, appreciate them when they come, and acknowledge that they are validation of everything that you've been doing for yourself. But at the end of the day, they're not you and you're not them. And it makes it easier for, if like something comes through that you don't like it, or something that you feel like you messed up in. I'm doing air quotes when I say that. Or something that maybe wasn't a win but was a learning. You don't have to identify yourself with that either. Because if we just identify with ourselves with our accomplishments, then we're going to have to also identify with our failures. And I think that's when anxiety will start to creep in. And that's what I was doing with track and field, is I was acknowledging that every single thing that I accomplished, basically, if I won or if I got a personal best, then I was worthy of love and humanity. And if not, then I wasn't. And so think about how nerve-wracking that would be every time I stepped on the track or every time I stepped on the field. My
Yeah.
identity was up for grabs. It was up for discussion, and it was just going to depend. So I was literally fighting for my life, my value. I was every day I was fighting for my value. Who wouldn't feel anxious about that?
Yeah.
And so when I really started saying like this is what I'm doing, but the way that I'm showing up is who I really am. When I no heighted, what happened for the people who aren't aware of my Olympic story is what happened at the Olympics is the second event is the high jump. It's my best event. And it was a whole whirlwind of things. I was jumping incredibly well. There was a confusion with a lot of the umpires and the judges. There was like a lot of confusion, so I was really confused about the order of events, and like one thing led to another, and before I knew it, I was out of the competition. I no heighted in the high jump. I had never done it before. It was so devastating and so chaotic.
Hmm.
um but and I was I was so sad. And yes, I was bawling my eyes out, and it was a heartbreaking devastation. But I also remembered specifically, always I kept saying, who are you truly? You are the girl that shows up, and you're not, I'm not going to show up just sulking and sad and like ruining the vibe for everybody, because that's not who my best version of me is. If I'm going to show up, I'm going to show up as the very best version of me. And so I cried and cried and cried and cried. I redid my mascara, and then I walked on that track and I smiled and I gave every single person a show. And after the competition was over, I spent 2.5 hours walking around that Olympic oval, taking pictures and signing autographs and giving hugs and saying thank you so much for coming and watching me, because
Hmm.
that's that I wanted to make an impact that was bigger than just, oh, like you are good at a sport. It means more to me, and I mean more than just no hiding and high jump. And I wanted to show up as the best version of myself. And I attempt to do that every day in life, and I fall short a lot. Just like I fall short a lot in track and field. And that's again why I love sports so much, is we can compare it to real life.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
I constantly am falling short all the time. I'm constantly catching myself snapping at my husband, or I'm really not a big fan of gossip. And sometimes I'll catch myself, and you know what? I'm like, you know what? I actually take that back. And now I have to say 5 nice things about the person that I'm frustrated with. Because at the end of the day, showing up as your best self, it doesn't mean that you're perfect. And that's like one thing, is like showing up as your best self is not about being perfect. It's about continuously trying to progress forward.
Hmm. You know, I guess one thing I'd ask, um, what do you say though to people who might ask you, I just don't see why I should progress forward because I don't, because again, what you're saying is like this perseverance. And I think human endurance, I mean, there's so many stories of human endurance that are so profound and inspiring. But then you've got people who just don't want to do it. They don't have that. They just, the endurance only goes so far. And
Sure.
so I was wondering for you, has there ever been a point, even in your life, when, endurance just wasn't enough? How did you jump that hurdle when you just felt like this isn't, the endurance I have, it's just not breaking through this obstacle I'm facing?
Um, I think the number one thing, so when I was in 2021, I really didn't think I was going to keep going. I was so broken. After that year, it was the hardest year by far. And I was so broken down, and I can't even tell you. I think my husband, I think CJ would say, of 306 of the last 65 days of the year, I think you've cried 300 of them.
Hmm.
Like, are you okay? And like, is this really what you want to do still? And then that was in the middle of the season. I hadn't even gone to the Olympic trials yet. It was just a really hard year in general. And then when I didn't make the team, it was like it wasn't like, and he kept saying, well, did you have fun this season? And I was like, no, this season was awful. And I think the number one thing was that the first thing that you need to do is allow yourself to really feel your feelings. Because that's the thing about when your endurance runs out. It's hard to just say, just keep going. Like just keep going. Just keep going is overall the message. But just keep going doesn't mean that we're always positive all the time and we're always like, oh, okay, like here we go again, because I don't think that that's realistic. I can't even tell you how many times I just cried into my pillow, screaming, like because I just was so broken. I felt like I had nothing, was nothing, and it wasn't even about it. It was just about the fact that I had worked so hard for something that I just really thought I would have, and I
Yeah.
couldn't. It's like I couldn't do it anymore. And I will say I spent 3 months miserable. Like my off season was miserable. And I think I remember one day I let myself be miserable the entire time. It was probably really brutal for CJ. But I let myself be so miserable and hide away, and that's what I needed at the time, and I let myself do it. And then I remember I was kind of ready to get out of that winter stage where I just felt so awful. And I was like, what can I do to get out of this? And I just started going on not TikTok, on TED Talk benders, where I was just listening to TED Talks up and down and back and forth and up and down and back and forth. And I think it was like a full like 24 hours of me either I was either sleeping or I was laying there just listening to TED Talks. And then I remember I just got like in the mood to clean out my closet. So I cleaned out my closet. And then I got in the mood after my closet was cleaned out. I got in the mood I needed new bedding. So I got new bedding and I set it up and then I went and got like a new rug or whatever. And kind of like restructured my bedroom. And it was just like one little thing after another. And I just gave myself tiny little wins. And then I remember I went on a 5-minute walk and I just was like, okay, and then the next day it was a 5 minute, I like tried to jog for 5 full minutes, but I had been doing nothing for 3 months. So I was quite winded. But I remember I was like, oh, this is like really bad. I can't even run. So I was doing like little like 1 minute intervals of jogging for 5 minutes. And then I walked back in. And it was just like a little bit at a time. I allowed myself to fully feel all of my feelings, um, and then let myself start to pick myself back up just a little bit at a time. And I never
Mm.
rushed myself to try to get better. I just allowed myself to kind of find it. And then one day, I remember I was doing the dishes and I looked at the clock and it was like 7 in the morning. And I would naturally just decided to wake up early and like clean the house. And I was listening to music and I remember being like, I feel really good today. And so I ended up like deciding to talked to my coach. I like set up a meeting with her and we like had a conversation about like doing one more year. And she said she thinks it's like a really good idea. The track is opening back up from COVID and like all of these things. And it was just like, yes, okay, like I'm gonna do it one more time. And I felt my energy just rise and rise and rise and rise and rise. And um that's it's so interesting because it's never about always being positive and always being motivated. Sometimes you are going to feel like you just can't do it. And I know that like it probably sounds like must be nice that you could just go in a hole for 3 months, like sure. But also like sometimes it does feel like that, like we're just in a depression forever. I went to a sports psych and I did a lot of like what's called brain spotting, which is kind of like EMDR that really allows you to fully feel all of the stress and all of the worry and all of the past experiences.
Yeah.
Um, you can like really just like get it out of your body and you don't have to hold it and you don't have to have your body keep that score. And so,
Well,
doing
it sounds like too, like you didn't, when you persevered, like you were doing it day by day. It wasn't, okay, I'm persevering and I'm thinking about this entire year. How am I possibly going to persevere through all this? It was just, I'm going to do this one thing and I'm just going to focus on that one thing and then the
Yep.
next thing. And it was a moment by moment perseverance kind of thing.
Oh yeah. And I think that we get into those moments, you get in those like random motivated states where you feel like you can plan everything in advance and everything goes so well and you're like, yes, okay, this is just how my life's gonna be now. And then and then like 3, 4, 5 days later, you're like, I don't want to do this is awful. Like, why would I have even want to do that? I don't want to be
Yeah.
motivated. This is awful. Like this isn't sustainable. I mean, I would also say that's the same thing. It's the same thing as like track when there's ups and downs. Our motivation goes in ups and downs too. And when you have the ups, do the things and like make the plans and all those things. But just we need to stop assuming that life is going to be up all the time, that relationships are going to be up all the time, that like sport is going to be up all the time.
Yeah.
It's not realistic. And when we understand it, we can take the hard day by day. And then when you take the hard day by day on purpose, you get out of that space, you can look back and be like, wow, I am so strong. Like because I took that day by day on purpose and
Yeah.
with purpose, and I showed up as my best self even when it felt like I wasn't my best self. What I decided to do was do something one day at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. I was gonna ask you because you were talking about your parents and how your religious upbringing. Are you religious now, or like, how is that between you and your parents with, because I know you said you've even had to go through some mindset changes based on what you grew up with that was damaging for you. I mean, how does that look now?
Sure. So I don't have any like religious trauma. Like I don't have anything like that
Yeah.
at all actually. Which is good because I think I've always had an incredibly strong sense of self. Even when I was young, I think like being the youngest of 5 kids, I was literally like walking around thinking every single human being that ever existed thought I was adorable because I was the baby of the family. So I was just like, I was literally the person that was always like, do you want me to like sing for you? Terrible voice. Just would sing for people. Even in college, I remember I literally thought I was so funny. I just would just crack jokes all day long. And it's like, that's not your gift. Okay. Can you like have a seat? But like, I just genuinely was like, wait, you guys should all be laughing right now. And then I'm like, well, those people are laughing, so those are my people. And it's just like it's something and I always say kudos to my mother because I genuinely believe my mom gave me just like a delusional like confidence that isn't always there. That's also something that you have to like work on, but I think honestly just having like self-awareness of the fact that, like even your self-confidence is going to go like this. Like it's just part of it. But in terms of like religion and spirituality, I'm incredibly like spiritual still, and I try to stay like as honestly as neutral as possible within those kinds of things because at the end of the day, like nobody knows for sure anything. And so for me to deny or like anything, any possibility would be silly. And so for me, I'm just like very open to so many different opportunities and so many different things in life, whether it's like a specific religion. I think I love how much religion crosses over with one another, like looking into so many different religions. There's so many truths that seem to cross over. And in my mind, I'm like, well, there's got to be some truth to something because there's a little bit too much crossover for it to be random. So it's definitely worth looking at. And I try to stay like incredibly neutral with it because it would be silly for me to know anything.
For your life motto, then, would you say that perseverance and persevering through life and fighting for what you desire is kind of what you live by?
Um, that's a good question. For my life motto, I would probably say specifically for my life motto is like you have to be happy. Um and like nobody else can make you happy but you. Um and like when you make you happy, you'll be surprised by like, because when you're genuinely happy, like how authentically you want to come out to yourself. Um, like following like my dream with track, I was talking to CJ, and I remember us having the conversation way back in 2016, when he was living in Denver and I was about to move to Santa Barbara to go do track and field. And I really told him, like, I really want to do this, but I'm not going to be able, like, we aren't going to be able to work if you're not also on board with this, because I can't be with anybody who doesn't want the success as much as I do. And in the same breath, you're not going to be able to be successful in your business if I don't want it for you.
Hmm.
And, we had those conversations about, specifically like, I need you to also want me to succeed. And you need me to also want you to succeed. Because if you are hoping that I'm going to make you happy and I'm hoping that you're going to make me happy and we can't make ourselves happy, like we're going to have problems. And that means that if one of us starts to succeed and oh, you're succeeding, but you're supposed to be my happiness, like it's going to feel like they're taking from you, right? By them succeeding, because they're supposed to just give. You're just supposed to give and give and give, and you're supposed to just get and get and get. And it's going to feel really tough. But when he succeeds, I am over the moon, and it feels like I won. And when I win, it feels like he won. And I think like really being able to put yourself first, almost to even find a partner who's also going to like be just as happy. But like, I think it's because he's so happy with who he is and I'm so happy with who I am. That would be probably my life motto, is like, you have to chase your happiness, and not in a selfish way. Like, your happiness also gets to really like serve others. And I mean, I still get a chance, if you're somebody who has never heard of Marco Polo and you want to stay in touch with like your friends and family, I literally talk to almost all of my friends, my best friend from high school, and almost all of my best friends from college every day. Literally, I talk to them every single day. And my relationships are so valuable to me. Um, I would honestly just say you have to chase your own happiness. Nobody else is going to chase it for you. No
Hmm.
one. And no matter how much you search, no matter how much you search for somebody who wants your happiness more than they want theirs, it like the closest you're going to get probably is your parents. But they're not going to know what's best for you. Only you will, right? So it's like, you've got to chase your happiness. Nobody else will do it.
Well, Chari, talking to you, I mean, you seem like just such a, like if you enter a room, you seem like you're a very like lighting person. Like you light the room up with your personality. I just want to ask you one more question because I want to be respectful of our time and I'm seeing we're a little over. But, if you had to, just as a fun thought, if you had to pick an animal that you were, like if you weren't human, had to be an animal, what personality you think animal wise you fit?
That is a fun question. I The thing is I really, huh. The thing is I have animals that I love, but when I really think about their characteristics, I'm like, that's probably not me. Like, I might be a panda bear. Because I like, truly, if I could, I would sit there and just eat all day. Like, it's like my favorite. I love like sitting down and just like eating, like, especially I could see myself being like a clan, like a monkey, like in like a gorilla group, and like having like, you got to have your like group, because I love my community. And I think I could identify with that as well. Plus, like, they're always playing on bars and stuff. That's very heptathlon of them. Um and I was gonna say sloth, but I was like, I literally am an Olympian, so I don't think that that would be. But I think sloths are, yes, I think they're like the most funny animal that ever existed. But yeah, maybe a gorilla, because they run in, is it herds for gorilla or packs?
I think it's
Or
her. I think it's herds.
herds?
Who knows? We
I
will
don't
ask.
know.
I'll ask a zoologist.
It's this. It's this. It's I gorillas, because they have lots of friends, and they play around, and like they're very explorative. So yes, probably a gorilla. strong, kind of intimidating, but like in a fun way. You also want to be like, oh, like I'll have a pet gorilla. You know what I mean?
That is so, and also I love how you said you love to eat. I
Oh,
love meeting a woman who says she loves to eat. I think that's the most feminine thing you could say.
oh, yes. Oh, yes. If I could just, I actually think that that is like one of the most, like, have you ever, there are like two things. If I were to be like, have you seen those like delightful baths? I like when I eventually like buy my own place, I will get one of those really big bath tray things that I can just pack full of snacks. And
Yes.
you know what I'm talking about? Those look
Yeah.
so magical.
Hmm.
And that would just be like so great. But I think that's actually really normal. I think like all women love to snack and like love and like I think that like because we as society like aesthetics are something that we all have to kind of like look out for, so we're all afraid to snack sometimes. But I think like if that wasn't an option, I think we'd all be like, yes, please. Like, I think we all just love to snack. And I love, like, it's one of my things is I love trying new places. And my education degree in my undergrad is culinary arts education. So I love cooking.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, so it's just it's such a fun hobby for sure.
Well, Chari, I mean, thank you so much. First of all, thank you for your patience with my pronunciation, also of your
Oh,
career and
no
everything.
problem. You're
And
good.
thank you so much for sharing your story. And it's been a delight. Thank you for being so vulnerable and open and willing to talk about stuff.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. I mean, I've always said, and I think it's kind of obvious, but like we won't know. You never know what you don't know, right? And that's like it seems like an obvious statement, but like truly not understanding. I used to think Olympians were like they just had it figured out. That's why they're Olympians. Like they don't have any issues. They figured all their mental stuff out. And I used to think like when I first went pro, I actually genuinely remember being like, well, I'll get better once I figure this like once I like get used to the 800 or once I get used to my anxiety down, it'll happen like the more I do, the more my anxiety can calm down. But it's like, no, like you have to fix you. You have to be okay. And then the anxiety will calm down. It's not just because when I become Olympian, my anxiety will calm down. Like that's not the case. In fact, I was incredibly anxious for the Olympic trials because there was a lot at stake. I was remembering 2021 of not making the team. And like, it really is interesting because I think athletes are revered as like this crazy like robotic like they must not have any issues and it's like we have issue we're it's just exactly like I promise you you know exactly what's going on with athletes. They're having a human experience. It's all one big human experience, and so we just got to do our best to keep putting one foot in front of the other, take it one day at a time, and keep going after the things we really want.
Persevere.
Persevere.
Well, thank you, Chari. Thank you so much. And for listeners, again, I'm gonna put a post. It'll be tagged to her Instagram. She has some really cool reels and just some pretty unintimidating, I would say, like just
Ooh.
exercises and stuff you can do. So check her out. And thank you so much.
Yes, of course. Thanks for having me. Thanks for chatting.
You're welcome.
All right, have a good one.
You too.